The year was 1978. The year after I started buying records, or probably right around the time I began. My last video was 10 great albums from 1977. The first year I call the year that I started buying records for myself. Kind of in hindsight now, it could have even been earlier 78 because of the first couple albums I bought were released in mid to late 77. So anyway, this could have been the first year, but we're not going to worry about that. Now, 1978. Of course, not all these albums that I own in 1978, but these are great albums that are in my collection from 1978. Again, if you missed the first one, real briefly, I'm sticking to vinyl, so it's got to be records that I have, not CDs, vinyl records that I have that are from 1978. So turns out when I go back and look at some of the great albums that came out in 78, I'm missing a lot of great albums from 78. Let's take a look at that. All of these are going to be runners up because I don't own copies of these. You've got Queen, Jazz, you've got Police, Outlandos Do More, you've got Black Sabbath, Never Say Die. These are albums that would be in my collection. There's a lot of great albums, and these are just ones that one day should be in my collection. AC/DC Powerage, some Genesis, some Yes, maybe. Boston, Tom Petty, AC/DC If You Want Blood, Doobie Brothers, that'd be great to have. Let's see what we got here. There's some Journey with Infinity, Foreigner. Anyway, I do not have any of these. Joe Walsh, I'd pick that up. That Daryl Hall and John Oates Along the Red Ledge, there's actually one of those at my local store, and it's on red vinyl from 78. So interesting. Whitesnake, Trouble, REO Speedwagon. You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. I have no Molly Hatchet on vinyl in my collection. I have everything on there is on CD, but I realize I have nothing by them on vinyl. Anyway, these are some of the ones that I don't... Judas Priest, I believe. I'm going to see that on the list, I think. So Judas Priest had an album out, the Hellbent for Leather, which came out in America in 79, but it came out originally in 78 overseas. And so that would be considered 78. So anyway, those are some of the great ones that I do not have yet, but that I would like to have in my collection at some point. So they might be added. So let's jump right into this. These are albums that I do have. 1978. 10 great albums. I hate ranking them. We can call them top 10. I put them in order from lowest to highest as just looking at them real quick. So 1978, Phil Keaggy, the master and the musician. Absolutely a beautiful, masterful, acoustic type instrumental. It's probably got electric on here too. I mean, it's just an instrumental, guitar-centered album. Phil Keaggy, amazing guitar player, and I've enjoyed most all of his work, but the work that has just the guitar, I've really got into, especially back in the 80s when I was on this big kick of just all kinds of instrumental, the shredder type metal stuff, and then I dipped into him and some of his albums back in the day that had instrumental, including this one, and it became a lifelong favorite. Just a beautiful, beautiful album by Phil Keaggy. I've enjoyed his stuff. He's still producing and putting out all kinds of stuff these days, but... Styx, Pieces of Eight, the only Styx album I own, though not my favorite and not the only one I want to own. It just happened to be, this was one that I found in a used record store early on when I started buying records. Early on, probably the first year. It's in decent condition, very good. So yeah, there weren't a lot of hits on here, but you know, Sing for the Day, I think, is one of the bigger hits on here. So yes. I dig Styx, and so I'm going to get more, but that's 1978, one of the 10 great albums in there. Alice Cooper, From the Inside, such a great album concept that opens up. It's got the window and everything, so this is some of the early stuff. You know, of course, when you're getting into the later 70s, he was starting to have rocky points with the alcohol and drugs and all that and everything, and then he came back after some time away. Came back in the early 80s with some of what I consider his best stuff. But this is definitely Alice Cooper band 70s stuff, and this is just, it's a solid album. I love it. It's great stuff, and of course it's more or less kind of a concept album about mental war type stuff. Great things. All right, now this is kind of tricky. Triumph Rock and Roll Machine. Now, this is actually a compilation release of songs from their first 2 albums, I believe. So this is kind of like an American reissue of their early stuff under a title. There is an album called Rock and Roll Machine, which is got different songs, and it's, you know, so they've got 2 different albums by this. I can't recall all the details, but I was checking on which one I had, and I have the one that has the songs from the previous albums. Anyway, I went ahead and mentioned this because Triumph is great. I love Triumph, and this was a great 1978 release that I do have. Obsession by UFO. Michael Shanker years. Love Michael Shanker. Love UFO of that era. And so, yeah, kind of hard to read. There were a couple hits on here. Why am I? Only you can rock me, rock me. Yeah, great stuff. It's kind of rough on the back there. So, UFO, great things. Where are we at here? 1. So that would have been number 6. Number 5, we've got Rush, Hemispheres. Rush had to be in there. This is not, this is a great album, but not as favorite. But for 1978, this is definitely a top album. It made the top 5 there, Rush, Hemispheres. Resurrection Band, Awaiting Your Reply. This is technically it's the first album by the Resurrection Band. They had been around since 72. They put out a couple demos in like 74, 75, 76. And then this is their first album in 1978. Resurrection Band is a Christian hard rock band. And they are one of the early ones. This is pre-Striper. This is pre a lot of those bands. Hard, bluesy, edged, hard husband and wife team, tag team in the vocals. And this is a beginning. And this is just amazing album. Had to be in my top 10 because it is absolutely a gem for 1978. Now I'm going to cheat a little because I am going to put all of these in as one. We're talking the Kiss solo albums. I'm not doing them each individually. We're going to look at all 4 as one release because they all came out at the same time and I bought them all at the same time. And 1978 was the year when it was, this was the new Kiss album, and it was Kiss album. So I have done a separate ranking video on this a couple years ago. You can go back on my channel and look. I guess if I remember briefly, I'm going to say, Ace Frehley was like my number 1 choice. And then I actually really ranked Peter up pretty high. I really enjoyed it because it was so different. Paul, to me, was the one that sounded the most like Kiss, and his songs sounded like Kiss songs, and so it didn't really do as much for me. And the Gene one back in the day, I really, really loved. Even though some of it now is kind of weird, I still dig this album. So anyway, yeah, I love them all for different reasons, and I love the fact that they are so different. And Ace would still be my high water mark there. So Rainbow, Long Live Rock and Roll. The Dio years, of course, this is probably the favorite. It's just solid album, and it's got Cozy Powell, it's got Dio. What else do you need? It's just an amazing album. And so yes, this one is coming in at number 2. Number 1 1978 album would be Van Halen's first album. Funny though, because I had the Kiss solo albums in there, and Gene Simmons basically helped them to get signed and everything, so it's kind of connected. They got their 78 album with the help of what Gene did in the early involvement there. This is essential. If you're a hard rock fan, you have to have this in your collection. There's just, this is the single pivotal album that is just a high watermark. It's got all hits from top to bottom. It is just an absolute classic. So there you go. 10 great albums from 1978 in my collection at this time, and a lot more that I need to add from 1978, but that's where we are now. I thank you so much for coming back and watching, and I will see you later. Rock on and rock hard.